Okay, in that case, welcome everybody to our online event, Winning Hearts and Minds for Agricultural Revolution, with our special guest today, Dr. Leyla De Amicis, who is here from the University of Glasgow. We're very happy to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, you have a PhD in psychology. And your research topics include things as chronic pain or empathy. Very interesting. But today you will tell us something about psychological factors that are hindering agricultural revolution. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm Dr. Leyla De Amicis, and I work at University of Glasgow. I've been, I had my PhD in psychology at University of Sussex in England, and I've been working for several universities doing research and also teaching. I'm more a social and developmental psychology. So actually my main topics are prejudice in children and bullying. I have also done studies on chronic pain and mostly related to mindfulness and the different sort of psychological, cognitive psychological approaches to improve how to cope in the families and with children towards different issues, also health issues or mental health issues. But my main topics will be like prejudice, bullying, and creating interventions. And actually the area of myth reduction is located in this social justice topics, because myth reductions, as we will see, consist also in a sort of conflict between meat eaters and vegans and vegetarians. So it is again located in the intergroup processes and the conflict that I'm trying to solve and to give a contribution to. Okay, so if I can say more about this topic. Okay, so first of all, we need to understand why we are talking about animal agriculture, how to fight against it, and ultimately why people should eat less or not at all meat. There are several reasons for this, and so these are listed. So meat reduction is associated, actually also responsible for greenhouse mass emissions. So these data are still from the 2006. Probably now there is a huge difference and worse. So the 14.5% of greenhouse gas emissions were associated to meat production. Also, a massive amount of freshwater resources are used for animal factories. The food for animals that are in these animal farms and factories are also responsible for deforestation. So the 91% of the Amazon seems to be caused by animal farming and factories. Obviously, there is a massive biodiversity loss, and there is also an association of meat consumption with several diseases, and I'm going to talk about them pretty soon. Also, meat production is associated with an increased risk of pandemics transmitted by animals to humans. So, for example, even COVID-19 has been found associated to how animals are farmed, are grown, raised and abused, and then this is causing some disease transmissions. So obviously there is also a lot of animal exploitation and humane cruel conditions in these animal factories. So the 90% of animals live in factory farms and billions are slaughtered every year. So all of these are probably relevant points to take in account to reduce our meat consumption or even stop it, given also the alternatives that we have at the moment, especially in the Western countries. So this is also to underline the association between meat consumption and human health. And these are slides actually that my colleague Jana Andersen did for an online panel discussion that I led a few weeks ago, and just showing how a lot of different types of meats are actually responsible of cancer. And so, for example, the ones that are classified as group 1 are the ones that are more high risk of, or even found to really cause directly cancer, while other types of meat are considered strongly associated and causing a cancer. So yes, this there is like strong evidence about this. And I'm going to, oops. Okay, talk slightly, very quickly about these studies that has been conducted. So there is this UK biobank that has data from the big population, and this study has been conducted for 12 years. So it's a longitudinal study looking at the food intake of people and association with different disease. And what they found is that they were analyzing the different incidents of cancers, and they found that yes, there is like a strong association between especially women of breast cancer and in general in the final population also colorectal cancer related to the intake of different types, especially red meat. Okay, so this is just a summary. Processed red meat was associated with a higher risk of breast cancer. The risk increased with increased consumption and was independent of other risk factors, including other dietary factors. Unprocessed and processed red meat was found to be associated with colorectal cancer in male UK biobank participants only, possibly due to higher and more frequent consumption. Among male participants in this study, 31.4% of colorectal cancer cases were potentially preventable. These findings are from a more health cautious cohort than a general UK population, and only 9% is more than the recommended limit of 70 grams on the day, but globally the trend in consumption and its impact are still alarming. So it means like these are specific data, but probably we can generalize to a certain extent to global figures. Okay, so why people become vegan and vegetarian? So we're talking about Western countries because we will see probably, well, we'll talk very briefly. In other cultures, being vegans and vegetarians can actually be associated to specific philosophy or religions, for example, in India or Buddhism, also in some parts of China. But when we talk about Western countries, The reason why people started to embrace more and more the vegan vegetarian diet is due to these main motives. So some people are driven because of health motives, others because of environmental motives or animal rights motives. Actually, some people can be motivated by more than one, but maybe there is one that's more prevalent than the others. So what has been found in a research by Hopwood and his colleagues is that the health motive seems to be the most common motive that people that are still not vegetarian or vegan, so they're still meat eaters, would consider to become vegetarian. However, what is the problem is that when we look at the reception and the response to advocacy materials, the people that are actually more prone to change from meat eaters to vegans or vegetarians are the ones that are considering more strongly environmental or animal rights motives rather than health motives. The health motives are actually also associated with some remission. So sometimes people start to become vegans or vegetarian, but then actually they change their mind. And usually they are people that are the ones that are motivated by health reasons rather than environmental and animal rights motives. So this is what I was saying, like one of the reasons why people are meat eaters or not is also caused by the way that we conceptualize our relationship with animals. Some people are have a like high level of speciesism, so they consider that the man is at the top of a hierarchy and all the other animals come below, and there is like a hierarchy across different species, when actually some cultures, religions embrace more a neko view, so in which universalistic view in which the man is just part of different species that are on this planet. So yeah, there are differences across different cultures and religions, but we know that with globalization also things have changed quite a lot. So there is like more a tendency to increase also in developing countries or countries that had like some Buddhist tradition to become more meat consumers. So like, for example, China, that is a big country, but there is also a growing awareness of issues like linked to environment and animal rights issues in these countries too. Another thing to consider across different cultures is that in Western countries, sometimes meat is more associated with low classes, when the choice of being a vegans and vegetarian has been associated to higher social classes. And this is because at least at the start, vegan and vegetarian items were expensive, and also usually there is overlapping with education and social class. When actually in Eastern countries or developing countries, this has been like a reverse trend. So countries that are very poor and they are improving maybe their social economical status, meat is one sort of higher social status food. So there is the desire and there is a coincidence of eating more meat from the lower class, but to become like higher social classes. So there is a difference in how social classes are associated with meat consumption, so desire of eating meat. Although most recently has been also highlighted that in the UK, first of all, meat is becoming so expensive, then people are complaining about this. So it's becoming like a precious item to have in the diet for people. And the other point is that depending on how people can cook or are able to cook. The vegan diet, vegetarian diet doesn't need really to be expensive at all, but obviously depends on convenience. So if you are used to buy food that is already processed, pre-cooked, in that case, the vegan and vegetarian options will be more expensive than the meat ones. Oops. Okay, so an important point to take in account for why meat eaters find so difficult to become vegans or vegetarian, why there is this resistance. So the main point, the main resistance that we have is called cognitive dissonance. So in general, people find very conflicting to think about eating animals, because most of the times they love animals. So anyways, no one really, very few people enjoy the idea of killing animals. So if you ask people, kill the animal, no one, or very few people who do it themselves. So this is, probably something that you say, if you have to kill an animal, would you keep eating meat? A lot of people say, like, I will stop immediately because I can't really do it myself. So there is this cognitive dissonance. That means that your thoughts are something different than your behavior. They are in contrast. So you say, like, I like animals, I love animals, they are cute. And on the other hand, you are eating them. So obviously this doesn't go well together. So when we have this, what do we do? So there are different ways. Either we change behavior or we change our mind. And this is actually what is happening. So first of all, when I start from the top, when we have these dissonant conflicts, we have, first of all, we can have like motivations of and of thoughts about concerns about how animals are treated, how the environment is affected by meat production, and also concerns about our personal health. This conflict also started to go against other principles that are governing our self-identity. So we will start to considering why we are so inconsistent. So we feel like responsible, how we should be responsible about this, our self-integrity. There are differences between men and women, because men and masculinity a lot of times is associated with meat eating. There is a tendency to have more women, there are vegans and vegetarians rather than men. Different types of values will lead to different ways of perceiving this conflict that we have. Affinity towards animals, meat, and exposure to animals as well will influence how we solve this conflict and how we feel it, and the culture as well. So traditions are obviously affecting as well how we perceive this conflict between we love animals, we like animals, or we don't want to kill animals, but we eat them anyways. So what is going to increase this conflict is like being exposed to a sort of information that actually remind us that meat is from animals. I mentioned that we eat meat anyways. I mentioned that we eat harm animals. And also the presence of vegetarians are making feel meat eaters uncomfortable. So what happens when there is this conflict? Some people actually just block it. So they just avoid it. They try to not think about it. They try to not meet vegetarians, for example. Willful ignorance as well, try to not to go to investigate further specific topics, not looking into specific media, documentary, dissociating, just to think about okay, this is an issue that is not really so important for me. I can think about something else is more important. Some people have some perceived behavioral change, so they think like, oh, I have eaten less meat maybe this week, so that's enough. Or do-gooders, derogation is like, oh, these vegans are just crazy, they're so extremist, and so on. So there is a lot of stigmatization, because this moral conflict is making people feel some sort of pain anyways. So when there is this meat reduction cognitive dissonance experience, again, either people start to have more perceptual strategies, denying animal mind. So usually there is the thought that, well, these animals like pigs are not so intelligent, or they don't feel pain. Dichotomization, we are people and they are animals. So again, stretching this difference between, oh gosh, animals and humans and all other types of animals. Then there are these 4 ends that are very important. Meat is considered natural, normal, nice, and necessary. So this is why meat eaters want to keep eating meat. So it's natural that meat is available for humans. It's normal, you know, the lion eats the deer, so of course also the humans needs to eat meat. It's nice, it tastes very good, so I can't avoid this. It's necessary because I need my proteins. So this is another strong argument. So the third party blame can be like, well, the vegetarians or someone else is to blame for this. There is also a triad between meat eaters eating more vegans and the same vegetarians eating vegans. So there is like always one of the groups that gets stigmatized a little bit more. A moral outrage, so just people start to get very furious about this, emotional, they just block any kind of information that comes into this direction. And in this case, we have like the maintenance of these attitudes and even polarization. So people can become even more hostile. And so there is, even if this conflict can stay there, they are resolute to not change anything in their life. And so, yes, so, but there are people though that can actually change their behavior and reduce their meat income. So why this, how can we help these people, how these people are helped, what happened to them to change their diet. So there are good news though, at least in the UK, a recent online survey on 1,000 people showed that actually people 1 on 6 intending to reduce meat consumption in the next month, and 16% intended to reduce animal productions consumption. But they highlighted the difficulties of, having like free meat, meat-free products that they're not very tasteful. The price can be like more expensive than other products that actually include meat or dairy products. And the convenience, like where do I find it? What do I cook? It's not like something that I usually do. So it becomes difficult to have this included in my routine. So obviously we have to work on all these aspects, and the industry and business on meat-free products. We can really see that the products have become more and more tasteful, at least here in the UK. Also here we have like different types of food derived from different cultures. So they can be like Asian food that is more based on vegetarian products, veggies and fruit. So they don't really need the inclusion of specific meat products per se. So there is a higher availability and feasibility to be vegans and vegetarians in this country. But I can understand that in some regions, for example, it's not always the case. Of course, if we talk about London or Glasgow, this is the case, but in other cities can be like much more difficult. Okay, so anyways, what can we do? So because we have actually a conflict between vegans and vegetarians with meat eaters at some point. Indeed, vegans and vegetarians, especially vegans, are perceived strong, independent, and social conscious, but also annoying, arrogant, self-righteous, and judgmental. So the problem is then these meat refusers, so vegans and vegetarians, are perceived as a moral threat by meat eaters, because they are always reminding this moral dilemma about liking animals or not wanting to kill them, but also eat them. So a lot of times, yes, people that are eating meat feel like prejudged by these vegans and vegetarians. So what helps in the conversation with them, oh, I think, okay, is actually, for example, be a little bit flexible rather than very static, so dynamic. When you have a conversation with meat eaters, for example, there was this study, I'm not going to explain it because otherwise it's too detailed and it will take too long. But if you start to say, for now, I don't eat meat, I used to, but my eating patterns has gradually changed. I started, rather than say, I never eat meat. Once I have decided on this, my eating pattern has never changed. So this kind of, how can I say, like, well, they say it's stability, staticity, like this strong mind orientation is actually threatening even more people that are meat eaters. So when you talk with meat eaters, probably you have to take like an approach in which you show some sort of flexibility and because it gives like the idea that you can understand better the other part. Okay, so what else can help? I'm talking about more all strategies that we can use to maintain some dialogue. Why is this? If we block our relationships with people that are meat eaters, obviously they are the majority, first of all, and we are not going to obtain our goal, that is having people to embrace more and more this sort of different diets that help animals, the planet, and everyone really. So when you have like some conversations between vegans, vegetarians, and meat eaters, do not take a logical approach, but a more psychological approach. So I had a conversation about why do you don't eat meat, because I love animals, so I don't eat them. And people started to say, oh, but I love animals and I eat meat anyways. So there isn't any logic there. So you can't really win on this side. So first of all, it's like the approach that you can have. Try to humanize them, but also try to humanize the victim of the prejudice. So try to even try to help them to think about animals also in a humanized way, but also see them as humans, see meat eaters as humans, so that, you know, your outrage started to get a little bit smaller. Try to find common grounds and expand on that, try to find interest. So, I mean, the hatred get started to diminish. Plant a seed, not think about changing a person from scratch immediately. Consider why these comments were made, and also think about what helped you to change your mind. I mean, honestly, I haven't been vegan forever in my life. I was a meat eater as well, so we need to be a little bit compassionate as well, even if some arguments can really hurt us. But try to understand, you know, what made you change. How can we convince or be good examples for others in different ways without causing this polarization. I don't know about the last point. I'm surprised. It depends on the kind of relationship that you have with the person, if it is like a friend or not. But they say, I'm surprised to hear you say that, because I'm always thought you are open-minded. I'm not sure, but this is something that usually in the context of prejudice people can use. Okay, so here are other strategies that have been found that people, vegans highlighted when they are negotiating in their social networks their views with others. So sometimes there is a tendency of actually compromise for the time. So let's say like you are invited to Christmas dinner, and everyone eats turkey. Maybe you can say, okay, maybe for today I can eat it because, you know, a special occasion, your grandmother asked you to do it. So some people will take this sort of approach. Others will keep being still very consistent and trying to educate other people and try to say like why they decide to be vegans or vegetarians, but without accusing others, but just focusing on their choices. So obviously in this case, you have to be well prepared and provide some information and see to what extent people can be interested or not. On another ways, like just, you know, people eat different things. And again, still providing some correct views about what vegans and vegetarians are doing, being an active example of a vegan and vegetarian diet, and you can provide some food. So if you go to a Christmas dinner, rather than eating the turkey, you can provide some alternative food that everyone can taste if they want. Okay, so another possibility could be actually using techniques that have been used in the literature between intergroup contact or direct contact. Sorry, indirect or direct contact. I don't know if I want to go too much in depth about this because I think we are running out of time. And but just to say that if you meet someone and you're talking about this topic, maybe there are different consideration to do, like you should have like same status. You can work actually on different things together and having a common goal. Collaborate, so try to find a way of liking this person and doing things together, so that when you go back and thinking about the conflict that you have with between vegans and no vegans, this is a conflict that is less strong, if you want. And yeah, there are different ways. Sometimes what helps is having friends. So this is probably more for meat eaters. What will help them is like having friends of friends that they are vegans or vegetarian, or having friends that they are vegan, vegetarians, or observing a very good interaction between vegans and non-vegans and see how people can get still along, imagining a positive relationship or a conversation among them, see like examples of positive vegans. So for example, especially for men in which masculinity is associated with meat eating, when you present sportsmen that are vegan, this is something that is important for them to rethink and reflect about their diet. And probably, oops. Yeah, just the last slide is like a little bit of my work. So what I'm trying to do is collaborating with people that are working on this topic internationally, but also on with the community. I'm trying to make vegan food more accessible. So for example, we did a walking tour in which meat eaters were going to visit some restaurants that were vegan, and the owners, they were explaining more about the philosophy behind these restaurants or cafes. We went with families to visit an animal sanctuary in which animals were presented with their personality, and people were talked through their previous experiences as exploited farm animals. And we had like a storytelling event in which people were actually also engaging and asked to contribute to a workshop, and the storytelling was about why people chose to be vegans, and then the participants could actually write some stories about their relationship with meat, and the stories that they were saying were told were about a child thinking about not eating meat, being in conflict with this choice, and another one was about perceiving meat in a supermarket as associated with deriving by a natural animal. After that, everyone wrote their story, that they could talk with others about this, but it was very striking, I think, as experience. So I think people were having some thoughts and reflection about their diet. Okay, so these are different ways of communicating and talk about meat reduction, and see how we can reduce the conflict between vegans, vegetarians, and meat eaters, and see how people can change. Yeah, thank you. I hope it was clear.